Hi, I'm Elduende05. The mother of all Breath of the Wild glitches has just been discovered by the player zxrobin. Among other things, it allows for true item duplication, skipping the Great Plateau, and even using the Bow of Light from the start of a new Master Mode file. A massive warning up front. This glitch can easily mess up your save file if you're not careful. The potential negative side effects range from relatively innocuous, duplicated unsellable armor, to game-breaking, impossible to collect arrow types. In the worst case, it can even make it impossible for you to collect new items at all. For this reason, I recommend trying this out at first on an alternate profile if possible, and avoiding manual saves. As long as you only trigger autosaves, you can always close the game and restart it, then load your manual save to recover from any problems you get yourself into. Stay tuned until the end for a more in-depth list of additional pitfalls you may want to watch out for. Without further ado, let's get started. Part of this glitch involves overloading the menu, so you'll probably want several multi-shot bows, and at least one shock arrow. You'll also want a save file with some items you'd like to transfer. The items will be copied from right to left, so ideally your save file should have as few items to the right of your target as possible. Let's look at a specific example. I'd like to duplicate these 8 fairies until I have a stack of 999. I should first get rid of as many items to their right as I can, including stackable key items such as Korok seeds and spirit orbs. These key items don't interact very well with this glitch, so it's best to spend them in advance, and then trigger an autosave. Even after clearing out everything possible, in this case there are 10 key items we can't get rid of. Counting from the right, this makes the fairies our 11th item, meaning we'll need to offset the inventory count by at least 11. It's best to do this near a vendor. The steps are as follows. 1. Overload your menu. Equip a multi-shot bow and shock arrows. Tap ZR to draw your bow. Pause the game. Drop the equipped bow, and, without unpausing, equip another multi-shot bow. Unpause, and then pause the game again. Repeat these steps. Drop and equip a multi-shot bow. Unpause and pause again. Keep doing this, 5 or 6 times total, until Link becomes a floating head in the menu. You successfully overloaded your menu. 2. Go into your Materials tab and hold up to 4 different items, all of which must have at least 2 count. Unpause and sell all remaining items from the types you just held. Step away from the counter, since you need some space for this next part. You might be tempted to pick up a bow to un-overload your menu before the next part, but it turns out this is less efficient. I'll explain why in a second. 3. Next, go back into your menu and hold another type of item. Exit the menu and drop what you're holding, and you'll see Link only drops the last item. At this point, you've offset an internal counter which keeps track of how many items your inventory contains by the number of items held in Step 2. If you picked up a bow in Step 2, you'll reduce that number by 1. In this case, I've offset the inventory counter by 4. 4. Pick up a bow to un-overload your menu, if you didn't do it already in Step 2. Then repeat Steps 1 through 3 to offset the inventory counter by as much as you need. I'll do it once more. First, I overload my menu. Then, I hold 4 items. Then I sell the remainder. Then hold and drop another item, and my inventory counter is now offset by a total of 8. Let's watch the process one last time, without commentary. I've now got an offset of 12, which should be enough to cover my fairies in one other slot. these crabs. Let's load a file to see what happens. You can see the fairies and crabs were both duplicated. Let's explore why this happens. Normally when you load, the game first deletes all of the items in your pouch before loading the inventory from the save. In our case, however, we've offset the counter responsible for tracking how many items should be deleted. This results in the game failing to delete the last several items, in my case 12. This is why the duplicated items appear to the left of their respective slots. Fortunately for us, non-stackable key items will replace any existing items of the same type, so we don't need to worry about those duplicating. Stackable key items are another story, however, and I'll talk about those later. This offset state persists through multiple file loads and even works across mode changes. All you have to do is return to the title screen, switch modes, and then load any save. Remember to trigger an autosave to persist these new items to that save file. The only way to clear the offset is to close and restart the game. You'll notice if you sort your material inventory, the stacks of fairies won't combine. Let's try loading again to see if that fixes it. Nope. Now the game has copied over both sets of fairies, since they were the 11th and 12th items. Fortunately, combining these is pretty easy. Simply hold 5 at a time from the rightmost stack, drop them, and quickly pick them up again. The fairies will be added to the leftmost stack. Keep doing this until the stacks are fully combined. Then, simply load the file again to duplicate some more. Eventually, you should trigger an autosave by approaching a shrine, for example, so that you'll be duplicating more with each load. Keep following this process, and eventually you'll notice the fairies no longer get duplicated. What happens here is that the game only allows you to hold 999 across all stacks of a particular item, so the stacks you're transferring in are replacing the stacks already on that file. This also means you cannot get multiple stacks of 999 materials, sadly. At this point, you should either use or sell however many you need, so that you're carrying exactly the amount missing from whatever is on the file. In my case, my autosave had 507 fairies, so I needed to use enough fairies to get down to 492. Once you do this, you can load to duplicate one last time. Combine those stacks to get your final stack of 999. Now let's do something a bit more ambitious. I'd like to transfer all the important items from this inventory onto a brand new master mode file, including the Bow of Light and my 80k stacks of arrows. Most people I've seen recommend starting a new file after setting up your slots, but I prefer to set up a blank save beforehand to load instead. Close and restart the game, then start a fresh master mode file without the glitch active. Select one of each item type, then drop them all, and trigger an autosave. This save will serve as a clean target to receive all the items later. Go back to your donor save, and offset your inventory counter to cover all your important items. Once you have enough, double-check your desired inventory. Sell or eat anything you don't intend on transferring. In this case, I wanted to transfer 12 key items, 5 meals, 2 materials, and 30 armor pieces. Note that your new game only has slots for 4 shields, 6 arrows, 5 bows, and 8 weapons, so you'll want to drop any excess and choose your strongest. I created a total offset of 72 to cover all this. When your inventory offset exactly matches the number of items you're holding, the game will make it look like you have an empty inventory. This is just graphical, and the items will still transfer if you load. I won't cover negative offsets in this video, so maybe avoid them for now. Suffice it to say they can lead to some weird situations, like 2 sets of inventory tabs. Once you're ready, return to Title, switch modes, and load the blank master mode save file you made earlier. You'll get a bunch of notifications related to the gear that just loaded into your inventory. Check that everything looks okay. Then go trigger an autosave again. At this point, items such as your paraglider won't quite work yet, but there's an easy way to fix that. Close the game, then restart it to reset the glitch. Load your save, and if you have the DLC, you might get a notification about the Trials of the Sword, or other quests depending on what items you carried over. Once this cutscene finishes, you'll have access to items such as your paraglider or champion abilities. At this point, it is probably a good idea to trigger one last autosave. Here you can see I've transferred over all the champion abilities, a small amount of spirit orbs and Korok seeds, as well as Hestus maracas to get a head start on upgrades. I've also transferred some hearty foods, a full stack of Ferosh horns to sell for money, and more fairies than I'll ever need. I've also transferred over fully upgraded armor, and high-tier shields. Finally, I've transferred the Bow of Light, several of the strongest bows, 80,000 of each arrow type, and several strong weapons, including the Master Sword. Moreover, these weapons and bows all come with 800 durability, thanks to the inventory corruption glitch I covered previously. If you're just after the Bow of Light on a new Master Mode file, you can also create just enough offset on your existing normal mode file to cover your Bow of Light, all arrows, whatever armor you plan on keeping, and all your key items. Sell or drop everything you don't need, and trigger an autosave. You can then engage Dark Beast Ganon in battle, and as soon as you collect the Bow of Light, you can load directly into your blank Master Mode save for the same effect. You can also do something similar with the Hylian Shield. If you create enough offset to cover your shields on a file with enough XP to collect the upgraded Hylian Shield, you can trigger an autosave, then loot the chest, and load the previous save. The shield will be duplicated over into that file, but the chest will remain unopened for later. This allows you to collect both modifiers of Hylian Shield, durability up and guard up. You can then transfer durability onto the guard up shield, so you have one shield that effectively has both modifiers. This method is far easier than the previous one, and can be done retroactively to transfer the shield onto an existing file if you missed it before. You may wonder why I suggested using up all your Korok seeds and spirit orbs earlier. It turns out if you duplicate these, you can't combine the stacks manually like you can for materials. It is possible to use these items, but you have to use up each stack exactly before moving on to the next one, left to right. While this is possible for small numbers of stacks, eventually you'll run out of places to spend them, and they'll end up taking up space forever. Thus, it is best to avoid duplicating these by simply spending them all before you start duping. You may also wonder why I suggested using a blank file to transfer the Bow of Light, in the 2 scenarios discussed previously. It turns out to transfer bows, you have to transfer any arrows you are carrying. If you do this onto a file which has any arrows unlocked, it will create duplicate, non-functional arrow slots which prevent you from collecting all arrow types. You can even keep doing this until you have more than one tab for arrows. There is a workaround for this, but it requires you to have at least 999 arrows of each type you've collected, so it's not particularly practical. If you want the Bow of Light on a file, it is best to do it on a brand new one. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, and you're not already one of these exclusive 4%, consider subscribing and enabling notifications to hear about new videos when I post them. If you are already, thanks! Your support means a lot to me. This glitch is still being actively researched, and it is likely new capabilities will be discovered in the coming days and weeks. I'll make sure to cover any new developments as we learn more. Finally, thank you for watching.